Welcome back to another edition of Talking Ball. Today we have a fun game that we're looking ahead to, which is Duke versus Virginia Tech. We get to see a former Dookie come back and play Duke at Cameron. And I think it's going to be another opportunity to learn more about this Duke team as we get deeper into the season and we play our third conference game, albeit not the best of opponents here in Virginia Tech, but it is still a conference game, so anything could happen. And with that being said, what are you looking forward to most from this game, JD?
Happy New Year! The game takes place from 4:30 until 6:30. We'll be on the air shortly thereafter. And it's our last game together in 2024. And so it's Happy New Year. But the three keys for me that I'm looking for from Duke is the continued testing of different lineups, substitutions, and against Virginia Tech, I think there's a good chance we could go 11 deep. I'm expecting us to win by 20 or more. I'm not really worried about the first segment at home. Usually I am, but I'm not. So that's one. The second is I want to see specifically the integration of Mal again. That is going to help us in every game going forward. That they're looking for him for, not just his defensive prowess, but his offensive ability. And we know he's a fine free throw shooter. So if he gets fouled, just okay with me. And the last thing is, because it is New Year's Eve, that last segment belongs to Hubbard. So those are my three things I'm looking for. Continued integration. I think it's still in a tune-up, but it's in the lower third of the teams they'll face in the ACC. Integration of Mal and Hubbard in the last segment.
I like that. We got to the three keys early on. To your point, definitely buried the lead. Happy holidays. Happy New Year to all of our listeners, new and old. And hopefully we can continue to keep getting new subscribers here. So if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. And with that being said, I think it's an appropriate time to start going over the Virginia Tech roster here. So look, Coach Mike Young, he's had a above average run, I think is a fair way to put it, at Virginia Tech. And this team is not his best. Let's put it frankly. They are 5-7, but I think even that paints a brighter picture than what it's been, because they started off 3-0, and they are 2-7 since then. They are led by Toby Lawal, who averages nearly 11 points and 6 rebounds, also nearly a block and a steal per game. My Lagel Poteet, 10 points per game, 4 rebounds for the graduate senior there. And then old friend, as I alluded to earlier, Jaden Schutt is their leading minutes getter, over 28 minutes per game. Third leading scorer, 9 points per game, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. He is shooting 37% from 3 and averaging 1 steal per game. And those 3 players have started all 12 games for Virginia Tech, the Hokies, so far this season. Now, after that, things get a little bit interesting. I think Coach Young, the past couple of games, has started to find some different lineups. I haven't watched all Virginia Tech's games this year, but just from watching the Navy game and from looking at the box score from a tough loss against a good St. Joseph's team, it seems like a couple of things are shifting. So, for example, Brandon Rechsteiner had been their starting point guard for a good amount of games this season. Ben Hammond from Paul VI, who was teammates with Pat Gongpa and Darren Harris, started his first game of his college career after really good games with Navy and the game before that as well. He is only averaging 5 points and 2 assists, but he is averaging a steal, and that's only in 15 minutes. He looks pretty solid, so I expect him to get another start for Virginia Tech. Jaden Young is a good shooter. He's gotten 4 starts, averaging 7 points per game. The other guy that I want to mention, though, as somebody who's been getting more opportunity and playing well, is Rodney Brown, who's only played in 7 games this season, but besides the last game with St. Joseph's, seem to be coming on and playing better. They've also gotten a little bit more from Patrick Wessler, who's in his 3rd year at the program, 2nd year playing as a redshirt sophomore. He is 7 foot. And then last guy I want to make sure I mentioned here is Ben Burnham, who is a transfer from College of Charleston, averaged 11 points per game at the College of Charleston. Hasn't had the best start to his Virginia Tech career. And then one more guy I did forget here quickly is Tyler Johnson, freshman, averaging 6 points and 5 rebounds. So there's a lot of areas that this Virginia Tech team could improve on. I would love to give this is what they're doing really well. It's hard for me to find that. So with that being said, I would just say they're, maybe like below average across the board. Not terrible, but below average. They rank in somewhere around 150 in offense and defensive efficiency on KenPom. The couple areas where they really struggle, in fairness, that they're worse than below average as a team, are turnovers, where they average over 14 turnovers per game, and fouls, over 18 fouls per game. So there should be opportunities for Duke in transition, and there should be opportunities for Duke to get to the free throw line.
So just a little bit of interesting background. This is a team that has suffered from the transfer portal. They had a major outflow of players, and the coach has had to try and bring a bunch of young players in, but clearly this was a net loss to the Hokies for Mike Young. In the Fighting Gobblers, one of the local papers for Virginia Tech, they say they need consistent shooting, as you pointed out, and the development of the younger players in order to improve. But a little bit of Virginia Tech history for you. They've had 3 number 1 picks in the NBA. So in 2019, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 2019, went to the net.
Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And by let's just clarify for our watchers and listeners out there, you're saying first round picks, not first overall picks.
First round picks.
I gotcha. Okay.
Then go to 1986, when one of the most famous dads was in the first round for Virginia Tech, and that would be Del Curry, father of Steph and his brother Seth. Goodness knows whatever happened when they were like yelling at the kids. Seth, whoever, whichever one of you made a mistake. Okay. And then you go back to 1973. Alan Bristow was also a first round pick. So a little bit of Virginia Tech history there. But other than that, I'm staying with this is going to be a 20-point plus win for the Dukies. They're at home. It's New Year's Eve. Yes, they haven't played for a while. Normally, I'd be all upset about the first segment. I am not. Um, the continuation and the theme of this year's Duke team will be our defense. And as long as the defense is up and ready to play in the first segment of this game, we're not getting in any hole.
No, I wouldn't expect that. I think that the only challenges for this game are what you were alluding to in terms of the time of the game, 4:30, New Year's Eve. There's been a number of days that Duke hasn't played now, at least a week off, so they could come out a little bit slow. There's the worry for that. But before I get more into Duke, there's a couple of things you pointed out with Virginia Tech that I want to touch on quickly here, which are number one, as you said, it is important for Coach Young to get some of these freshmen and younger players opportunities to play this year. Now, typically in years past, you would say it's really great for the development of Virginia Tech. But with the way college basketball works these days, he could just be developing them to have them transfer on somewhere else. And so that's always the tricky part.
Thank you, Coach Young.
Right. Thank you, Coach Young. It was great. Thanks for all the playing time. I'll be going somewhere else. And that is the risk and the reality of college basketball nowadays, because to the article that you were referring to, opposed to a lot of other teams, this is a young team for the most part. They do have a couple juniors, a couple seniors, but there are some younger players who, are not, top 30 recruits who do play for Virginia Tech, either as sophomores, redshirt sophomores, or freshmen. They have a lot of they're inexperienced, and part of the reason for that is Hyzier Miller, who they brought in as one of their top transfers. As you said before, Coach Young had a rough go in the transfer portal. Losing a Sean Padula really hurt this program, and then they also lost two guys in Tyler Nickel and another MJ Collins to Vanderbilt. And there was maybe one or two other players who also transferred out who were part of the rotation. And that doesn't even factor in losing Hunter Couture because he ran out of eligibility. So this was going to be a tough year. Now,
it would have been his 7th year?
6th year, yeah. So we hold the line at 5. After this year, at least we're back to 4 years. So we can stop with some of these crazy statements about guys who are in their 5th year breaking records. That's the one thing that really bothers me. We're like, oh, this guy's now played the most games in college basketball. Well, he's got an extra season. I think that might be part of it. But the point I was getting to, one of the transfers in top transfers that they were able to bring in, along with the Toby Lawal and a Ben Burnham, was Hyzier Miller from Temple. And just before the season, it was announced that he wouldn't be playing for Virginia Tech this year. He was the player that had apparently some suspicious gambling activity while at Temple. It was something that had come up last year, and they did not let him play this year. So that was a big blow. He wasn't efficient at Temple last season, but he did average 16 points, 4 assists, and 2 steals. So it certainly hurts to, have a senior guard that you thought you're going to be able to rely on, just not on the team. So I think that couldn't have helped Coach Young, he's had a little bit of tough luck, between losing some transfers, what happened with Hyzier Miller, and what this roster is right now, because I do think he may not be a Hall of Fame coach, but I think he's a quality coach. He is, he does a good job of running the program, and they're just in a tough spot for this season. I hope some of these guys, these younger guys that develop this year, will stick around so Virginia Tech is back in a good place next season, because the one thing as an ACC fan is Virginia Tech. Oh, it's always been tough for Duke. I can't say other teams. I don't watch every other ACC game, but going to Virginia Tech and you've got the student section singing Enter Sandman at the start of the game. It is a raucous environment. They have a really good crowd when they play, when the team is playing well. So it was a little bit sad for me watching the Navy game and listening to the crowd. And it was, you could hear them singing, but it wasn't quite the same. And now, granted, some of that might be I'm used to them playing Duke, and this was a Navy game, so maybe also was around finals, so maybe they didn't have a full student section for that reason as well. But I think the ACC is better when Virginia Tech is good. So I hope, this can be a rebuilding year, and they can be back on track next season.
Jack, who's the biggest guy they have? They've got one big guy that doesn't seem to get a lot of playing time. But other than that, there's I don't see a lot of height. I think this is a game in which you can loft the ball to Mal, and Mal should be able to go for 16.
So to your point, in their starting lineup, they start Toby Lawal, who's 6'8", 215, and then Mijael Poteet, who's 6'9", listed at 6'9". I'm not sure if he's 6'9", maybe more like 6'8", but he is 260, that I believe. So to your point, especially against the starting lineup, I think the lob is going to be there. Lawal is pretty athletic, but he will be giving up 6 inches, so it's just tough. Now, the big guy that you are alluding to who doesn't play much is Patrick Wessler, who has been playing a bit more in the past handful of games. And playing, he had a good game. I believe it was the game before Navy. So he has been playing better. That's what I was talking about earlier. I do think he will see more playing time in this game. But can he's got the size to compete with Malawach, but he's not nearly the same caliber of player.
So, if in making the case for Virginia Tech, any ACC team coming into Cameron wants to win, as you said. Jaden Schutt, who couldn't score for us, normally we would say he's going to hit 5 3-pointers in this game because, of course, he did. It's just like he went to another school. I don't really see that happening, but I also see the layoff as something that may be rusty, and the greatest way to guard against that is have them really uptight on defense, and that will allow the offense and the rust of the layoff come back. So, it would be nice for the ACC to have a stronger Virginia Tech. Every team loves to give their best against us, but this is going to be a tough one for Virginia Tech and the Hokies.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason it's going to be, as you said, normally a guy like a Jaden Schutt comes to Duke, we think he's going to, hit 5 or 6 threes. But I think this, as you said, I don't see it happening in this game. And one of the reasons why is I think Duke is going to have Tyrese Proctor guarding Jaden Schutt. And there's probably not too many people in the ACC who are going to know Jaden Schutt as well as Tyrese Proctor, who spent 2 years with him at Duke and practiced with him every day and is going to know where Jaden Schutt likes to get his shots from. And I think it's going to make things very difficult because here's the thing. With Duke, as you said, the strength of this team is certainly the defense. And to take it a step further, the strength of the defense is the interior defense with Malawach and Brown and Cooper Flack to an extent. And so what that means is that if you can't get the 3-ball going, you have to live in the mid-range. Do I think Jaden Schutt could hit some mid-range jumpers in this game? I do. But the problem is that he's not going to be able to get to the basket. And with that being said, I think Proctor's going to do a really good job guarding him at the 3-point line, which means he's going to have to score a bunch of points from the mid-range. And I think that's going to be a tall task for Jaden Schutt. I do think Ben Hammond could hit a couple of threes in this game. Reason being, he is I don't know what he's listed at. Maybe 5'11". I'm not even, 5'11". I'm not sure he's even quite that tall, but he's very quick. And that is the one area where Duke's perimeter defenders can struggle a little bit with really quick, smaller guards. And so I wonder if Ben Hammond will get his second college start and be able to use some of his speed to create space to get off his own shot. But I don't think it's going to be a case where he's just breaking down the defense and finding open shooters around. I just don't see that happening. I'm with you. I think Duke wins this game, as you said, maybe a little bit rusty to start, but as they kind of shake that off, 20, 25-point win, maybe even more.
I think that could be. The only thing that I do remember is you and I were there for the pre-New Year's game. And part of the reason we got tickets is the sixth man is not there. The Cameron Crazies are just not there. This is part of winter break. And the noise level that is traditionally there for a Duke home game is not quite the same. It is still Cameron. It'll be packed. You only got to get 9,000 plus to fill the house, but it won't be the crazy students. So not much of a difference, but just something to point out. The players do love to feed off of that crowd energy, and it's not there Christmas week leading into New Year's.
No, it's a good point. The only other thing I want to see from Duke, we didn't really talk too much about Duke players so far. The only guy.
Well, let's run through it.
The guy I want to talk about really quickly is Kon Knueppel, because he's coming off his best game as a Dookie. And I'm curious, can he build on it? That doesn't mean he's got to come out and now hit 5 3-pointers. But it means, can he continue to stay aggressive looking for his shot? Can he see a couple go down? And also, can he continue to keep the Kon to Kaman connection going? Because he did the best job by far of getting the ball to the big fella.
The K2K connection. Absolutely. But I think that, Coop, we've been talking about, how he gets up for the big games, a lot of time off here. I think that he does everything else that he does well, he'll do well. He'll grab rebounds, he'll block shots, he'll know where the ball is. His basketball IQ will be very good. His scoring, A, he doesn't have to. B, I don't know that he will be on. I think that when it comes to K2, though, look more for him to do the K to K connection that he was so proud of last game. And that would be a really good part of his game to shine. I don't expect him with the layoff to be hitting, as you point out, 5 3-pointers. I'm just saying I'd love to see it, but I don't think it's going to happen. Mal, I'm really hoping for a big game. It's set up for him to do it. Tyrese, depending on how he feels, could go for 3 or 4 3-pointers.
And speaking of Tyrese, one thing I want to mention, Lawrence Freeman, shout out Lawrence. He said, the one thing he said, which I thought was a good point, was on Proctor's second halves. He did have a good second half in the Kansas game, but the one thing I had said about, maybe some of the shooting is because their legs aren't quite there because they play hard on defense. And he said maybe with Proctor, that's part of the reason why his second half shooting, overall hasn't been quite as strong as first half, because maybe he's just a little bit tired because he's always guarding the opponent's toughest perimeter player. So I do think there's certainly something that can be said for that with Proctor, who's been excellent this season. He's just much more consistent than he has been in years past.
And rounding off the starting lineup, I think it'll probably be Sion as
I
the
would
starting
say
guard.
go out on a limb, definitely. But I guess the one reason I would hesitate to go out on the limb there is we don't know if at 4:29 we'll get an announcement that Sion James is not playing because he sprained his ankle in practice. That will be the time we find out. That's the only reason I'm a little hesitant. But based off of how he's played, he's certainly starting.
So that means the next three have been certainly Malik, who we just adore for his defense, for his integration of everybody, and maybe we'll see him hit a 3-pointer. Um, Evans. Is Evans now part of that group of three, the 8-man rotation? Is Evans now in there along with Gillis or Foster? Is because you've got an interesting thing here that as Evans keeps shining, it's pretty hard to not want him in that next three. Um,
Well,
and Gillis, while he's not scoring prolifically or, you know, in any great numbers, his play is getting better. And the slippage, if anything, is occurring with Foster. And yet you want Foster to be ready. So it may be that what was the early, we're bringing in the transfer portal of Gillis, Malik Brown, and Sion to slow things down and shore up the defense. Their overall defense is so good now that it may turn into a 9-man rotation so
well,
that Evans gets time, Foster gets time, and then just because it's New Year's Eve, Harris and Gangba maybe get in there as well and see some minutes. And as I said earlier, I expect to see the final 4 minutes going to Hubbard.
yeah. To your, I guess maybe not to your point, but it has turned
You make
into
your
it.
own point.
Oh, I am because there's a small correction here. It has turned into a 9-man rotation kind of already. The Georgia Tech game, the 6th and 7th guys in, they came in at the same time, so I don't know who walked on the court first, but it was Evans and Malik Brown, and then 8 and 9 were Foster Gillis. That was the most notable thing from that entire game to me, was that Evans, he moved up. He's been moving slowly but surely up Coach Shire's depth chart, and he continues to shoot the ball well. He's been our best 3-point shooter so far this season. And to your point, I will say, I think it at this point is a 9-man rotation. Like I just think Coach Shire has to figure out the minutes for the 9 guys, but I think they all deserve to play. And then
Absolutely. I just want to say, Evans, I wouldn't want to be at a holiday meal with him because that guy's hands are always ready. And so anything on the table, that guy's got it. And Evans is going to be just he's such a joy to have on the court. He seems so happy out there. And so go ahead, round it off.
No, I think that's a good place to go from, because for me, in different ways, the 2 guys who bring me the most joy watching them are Isaiah Evans, because to your point, he just seems to be having such a great time. I don't know if anyone enjoys playing basketball quite as much as Isaiah Evans, at least on this Duke team. I'm sure you can make an argument for other people, but to keep it in this small universe, no one seems to be.
That guy named Cooper enjoys
yeah.
it. He just
It's a little bit different.
We talked about this, that he is so even keeled that after he does this thunderous dunk, there's no celebration.
You get a
His
little
face
bit. You get a little bit
expression.
from him in the big moments. In the big moments, you do get. You do get it. I. That's a good correction, though. That's a good correction.
I actually think, Jack, that it's more likely that when he makes a mistake, because of how positive he is about his game, that he'll be more upset with his mistakes, and that when he does something really good that looks amazing to us, but for him has now become average because of how good a player he is, it's just he runs back the court and it's just to the next
I don't
play.
know. I don't know. In the bigger games when he's scored late buckets, he's had it's been more than I'm just running back down the court.
I don't agree with it. Maybe when he was 17, Jack.
So you mean every other game besides Georgia Tech?
Now that he's 18, he's
He's a
much
totally
more
different
mature.
person. Okay.
Totally
Well,
different.
I'm glad you went to Cooper because I think this is a nice spectrum. You go from Isaiah Evans, who's just, full of emotion, like, okay. Then you go to Cooper, for the most part, even keeled, but he will show some emotion sometimes. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum from Isaiah Evans, Malik Brown. Sometimes I wonder if he even has a pulse. He's just so, talk about even keeled. You just don't know if he just blocked a shot or he had his shot blocked. It's hard to tell. And he gives on the opposite end of the court to Isaiah Evans, who's just always ready to shoot, as you say. His hands are always ready to go. Malik Brown, his hands are always ready to get a deflection. He's just a nightmare. And every time he plays, that's the word I use to describe it, is just like, I would hate to play against Malik Brown. It just seems miserable. And so he gives me a lot of joy in watching the game. So I guess with that being said, probably an appropriate place to wrap it up. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe, like this video, leave a comment. We want to hear from you, and share it with your Duke basketball friends. And with that being said, we are looking to get this to be a podcast, so be on the lookout for that so you can catch us audio only on the go. And we'll see you guys after the Virginia Tech game, which should be around 6:30, 6:40 Eastern time on New Year's Eve. We'll see you guys then.
In between, Jack, do you think we'll special editorial jump off Zion?
Well, that's up to you.
Do you think we'll get it ready? If I have it ready, do you think we'll be able to do it? It's just an amazing story, and I'd love to tell it the right way, or at least my version of it, without the ability. And I hope to do this periodically throughout the season, but without the ability to interview the player, it's as an observer. And, I've been watching basketball since I've been a little kid. And there's something about Zion that is worth he's the perfect choice for the first one of these installments of Talking Ball, the Talking Ball and editorial about a Duke player.
We shall see.
Okay.
So, all right. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.